Hey, good morning, world. It is Monday, May 16th, 2022 at 10:26 a.m. and it's Patrick Lovell, truth bombing the con, and a snapshot of the world is just as insane today as it was yesterday and the day before, and a couple of horrific tragedies, seemingly as always. This white supremacist shooter goes into a Buffalo grocery store, and unloads and takes out. I think he killed 10 people. 3 more were injured. 13 people total so far. And you know, I was looking at the list of the people, the victims who died, and there were like elderly women who provide support for food banks and churches and that sort of thing. And it's like, oh my God, man. I mean, this is it just is so fucking gross. And is it going to end? Is it just beginning? I mean, it's just one piece of the major puzzle, right? And a lot of economics that happens as a result of this insane dystopia that's based on the machine. That I tend to be scratch that. I don't tend to be. I am the only one constantly bringing you the revelations of the system that everybody in media, particularly independent media, they don't have the grasp, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the long vision because they haven't done the work. Comedians who respond to 24-hour cycles basically are going to get caught up in the milieu of all of those things that tend to be the kind of conversation starter of the day, the hysteria, the outrage, the reactions. And something will stay in the, I don't know if it's the zeitgeist, but something will stay, in our attention for several days. It'll have kind of like a cycle, a predictable sort of, format that'll stay in mainstream particularly, and there'll be outrage and they'll be horrific, and then there'll be personal tragedies, and sometimes it'll go into the revolting scenario of it's like a natural tragedy. Meanwhile, all of this stuff is kind of like downstream consequences of the system that it is that I continue to expose. And the system that I continue to expose, just kind of like a shard of it, if you will, is this madness of Bitcoin. I mean, Warren Buffett called Bitcoin, rat poison squared. Anybody who knew anything about macroeconomics understood it was a pump and dump scheme, and that crypto itself served no real value, no real purpose. Now, there is, blockchain technology that will be absolutely huge. But crypto itself, like if you go to your bank and you want to withdraw crypto and there's a run in the markets, there's no insurance for one. Federal deposit insurance. Okay, well, why do we have federal deposit insurance? Well, because of what we learned in the Great Depression, based on what took place to create 25% unemployment that led to World War II and all of these other things. The government stepped up and ultimately created rules and regulations that commercial banking have to immure, otherwise they go out of business. That's the idea. But we started deconstructing or deregulating the nature of finance and allowed commercial banking and speculation to blend back in the late 90s, and we created these derivatives and everything else. And so crypto was born out of the 2008 crisis, the collapse that I continually and perpetually demonstrate to you and show to you in the con at www.thecon.tv that shows you how that systemology, that pipeline of fraud created hypervaluations that led to massive derivatives that created, bets on top of bets on top of bets that just manifested a bunch of short-term insanity based on sawdust. That blew up the world, that then the Federal Reserve came and bailed out with fiat currency, and then of course, crypto was born to be able to hedge against that as if it were gold. But it's not gold. Crypto is not gold, and it has a lot of downsides because of energy and everything else. But again, the blockchain is what it is. But look, for all of you who've lost a shit ton of money in crypto, maybe you got a piece of the PPP loans, maybe you didn't work and you threw all your money into speculations and the NFTs and whatever kind of bullshit that came out of the last 2 years of people throwing money into the markets, and quite frankly, the apes and all the rest. It's like, you're not going to beat the man. You're not. Nobody's going to beat the man, because if you can ultimately, if you're the man, the hedge funds, the private equity titans, the asset manager titans, they get their money for free, and it's endless. And they can put it in their black box casino and hyper evaluate stuff, and then they've got like real, commodities that they bankroll and that they manage real money and sovereign, wealth funds like fucking Saudi Arabia, for example. And and that's the thing, right? And fiat currency, it's not nothing. We don't digitize money out of thin air, based on nothing. It's the United States the full faith and trust in the United States government that backs it. So for all you people in the crypto land that were like trying to hedge against this, unless you can create your own country, unless you can create your own resources, your own commodity, you have 300 plus million people living there that you earned by winning wars after wars after wars. You don't get to the place that you can create fiat currency. You get it? So it's not really a hedge. It doesn't have any real value, except for those that believe in it, that are pumping it up because they want to get a piece of it because it's gambling. Okay, fine. But we got to take gambling out of the economy, because real goods and services and people's labor and all of the things that go into the system should not be pieces on a freaking craps table, or something that can be speculated on and bet on in specific derivatives that can be managed, through these insane shorts, which have a purpose. All of this stuff has a purpose. We've been dealing with financialization and all of the layers of how the game are played for literally centuries. And there's a lot of great things that have come from the lessons learned, of which shorts and all of these other things tend to, kind of regulate the industry and create checks and balances. But what's missing is if you do what's in the con. Because if you have shorts predicated on putting the worst of the worst liar's loans in a pipeline that are going to blow up, and you bet against that, and you've got derivatives, and then you can get money from the Federal Reserve, that's a fucking massive crime. And that's our system. And as a result, the only people that are competing for power and control are literally the new robber barons and the new confederacy. They're the ones relentless enough. Those are the ones diabolical enough. Those are the ones motivated enough and, quite frankly, complicit enough to vie for control. And like I tell you over and over, what they're battling for, if you get the White House and you get Congress, you're going to get the judiciary and the Federal Reserve. It is the Iron Throne, which gets you the Iron Bank, okay? And what I am desperately trying to spark in your mind is a nuclear reaction to understand it's all about the tumor of fraud and corruption that is actually simply propping up the richest amongst us. And again, they're not the most successful because they're the Michael Jordans of the world, or the Mike Tysons, or the Tom Bradys, or those guys who are truly elite. No, these guys are lying, thieving, deceiving pirates that use the government to be able to backstop their losses, and the military to be able to create, monopoly or leverage. The Saudis attack us on 9/11. People within the Saudi kingdom who had knowledge that used their positioning to be able to fund the hijackers that ultimately our government allowed in, because there was people in our government at the top level that decided, yeah, you know what, we're going to let 9/11 happen. Do I prescribe that they dynamited every single floor of the World Trade Center? No, I don't think that happened. I think the conspiracy was that they wanted to create a long-term foothold in the Middle East to create regime change in Iraq and then ultimately Iran. And then, the balance of power goes to, ultimately within OPEC to Saudi, because, guys like Dick Cheney and George Bush at that time were deeply, deeply enmeshed in the fossil fuel industrial complex that, fuels the military industrial complex that fuels financialization. That's the power of this country, and nothing's changed for 20 freaking years. And everything else comes down from that. Pharmaceuticals, agriculture, energy, you name it. It's all under the umbrella of this system of power. And what I continue to tell you is that the new confederacy versus the new robber barons is a non-choice. That's corruption. I'm offering you liberty and justice for all based on the recontextualization of the law that holds bad guys to account. We have prisons to put bad actors who break the law in jail for a reason. You can't just do guys at the lower level that are stealing women's purses, for example, and not expect to get the CEOs of the world's largest financial institutions who basically destroyed teachers' pensions unions and laborers throughout the world. That's just one piece of the puzzle. We've created this massive money laundering sort of cabal between the big nodes that really are represented by, first and foremost, New York and Washington, D.C. That's the political, geopolitical, financial power. London, the city of London, the same thing for basically Europe. Moscow is a huge center of power because of what Moscow represents. And then, of course, you got a few cities in China, not to mention, of course, the one that's been there forever, Hong Kong. But then, of course, you've got in the United States, the two other nodes are San Francisco and Silicon Valley for technology, and then Houston, Texas, which is pretty much linked to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in terms of the fossil fuel hierarchy and the matrix of decision making. And then the military industrial falls from that. Okay, so yeah, it's the deep state and the Republicans on the right that basically want to create a culture war and create a revolution for what? The new confederacy and guys that are just being paid off by the same machine, quite frankly, whether it's the Kochs, the Mercers, the Adelsons and all of these other guys for what? Monopolization? And they're going to do the white man a favor? I'll tell you, I learned a long time ago that LBJ once said, and this is the one that blew my mind forever, if you convince the lowest rung white man that he's higher than the highest rung black man, you can pick his pockets all day. If that doesn't tell you how the system works, nothing else will. Yes, it's three-dimensional chess. Power works at your expense right now. It's not a government of by and for the people. It's not a government that is predicated on the rule of law. We lost that long ago. I'm going to say we lost it, quite frankly, before 9/11. But 9/11 to 2008, this is out of control, okay? And then what's happened next? COVID was a big deal. One of these days we're going to kind of sort that out and find out what happened. All I know is 1 million Americans have died from it, presumably. And if that's the case, holy shit, right? In terms of but yet we skip over it like, well, we lost 1 million people, big deal. It's fucking nuts. If you were in that in that grocery store, in Buffalo this last week, and suddenly you're waiting in line to buy, food for people that you're going to help, and then some dude pulls out a gun and freaking mows you down. What? That's the world we live in. And by the way, we've lived in that world for a very long time. It's madness. And same with, Bitcoin. I mean, it's like the whole thing that people would put so much time and faith and effort into something they were chasing. It's just the tulips all over again. What is the tulip binge? Look back in history, back to, with the Netherlands. And, and that's just one of many, freaking bubbles throughout history, right? And it's amazing the psychology of what happens to people that get fermented in all of these things. You've got to have systems that make sense. You've got to have systems that have integrity. You've got to have systems where people that are in control, that have been elevated by the people to be in positions of control, have the bad guys to account. Okay? So what I'm trying to do is I've joined up with the Justice Party, and we're going to create, I hope, in very short order, if we can pull this off, we got to create basically revival circuits all around the United States. I've got to go and I've got to create multimedia presentations to basically prove to everyone that's in attendance that we live under a corrupt umbrella and have a pathway to redemption. We're going to lay that out, just like an old, political barnstorming tour of populism. And we got to raise money to do that. But we need people to understand the facts from the very beginning. That's why I urge you to watch www.thecon.tv and then ultimately spread and share the word. Because all of you that aren't part of the 0.0001% are working for them, which a vast majority of us don't. You need to come to understand what it is that I've been telling you. And why do you want to listen to me, Patrick Lovell? Why? Because I did the work and I'm being honest. And I'm the only guy that does. Everybody else is chasing the 24-hour dragon, and nobody can continually see the big picture. The big picture is corruption. And it controls every aspect of our government. And the worst part of it is there's an international aspect of this that controls our country. Do I want to go back to isolationism? No. But is globalism right now working? No. I want the United States to purge corruption first and foremost, come up with a plan to redeem ourselves, because I think the Renaissance is just right around the corner. We can literally create the greatest resurrection in the history of mankind. And I don't think we need to lose tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people to get there. I think we can do that now if we use our common sense based on the facts and the evidence that we already have. That Anderson Cooper, that Rachel Maddow, that Tucker Carlson Not NPR, not the New York Times, not the Washington Post. Nobody is telling you soup to nuts in the way we are. The Federal Reserve basically fuels the world, okay? The Federal Reserve starts by fueling the big financial apparatus in the United States that creates this confluence that all of the international oligarchs are on. And they have been for decades. That is not working for you. That is not working for us. It's just a downward spiral to the bottom, and it's just created the new slavery. That's it. Indentured servitude. All of those types of things based on debt, ultimately. And the system can pick up the pieces of the puzzle after collapse because the system serves those entities. It doesn't serve you. So why would you allow them to continue to destroy the life of your life, the life of your loved ones, and the life of society if you actually give a fuck about the United States of America? You don't. And I don't want the people that navel gaze. I don't want weak people that say we can't do anything. I don't want people that are like me. I'm over here on my own island and I did nothing to stop it, but I know everything. No. The difference between me and the rest of those guys is that I had the opportunity and the foresight to actually go around the goddamn country, pick up the pieces of the puzzle, get all the whistleblowers, put all the facts and the evidence together, talk to the guys within our government, get the entire piece. Literally 50 million plus people should have already seen the con. And yes, I do want people to rent it because then I can prove paradigm change and change the paradigm of everything. I'm sorry, if you don't put money into a system, you're not invested. You need to put money into a system, and we made it a free option for those that can't afford it. So there's always options. But if you don't want to go to a library and get a library card and download the app Hoopla, then rent it for $2. Why is one documentary going to suddenly turn on the lights to everything that's going on? Because it's the revelation of the world's largest grift and scam and cover-up in history that never ended. It's our system. And until you understand who did what, when, and how the system works, you're basically lambs being led to the slaughter. I'm not a sheeple if you haven't figured it out. My last name means wolf, but I don't want to be the lone wolf because a lone wolf can't take on this vicious system by himself. I need warriors for justice. I need people that are actually courageous. I need people who understand that this life matters, that our family matters, that you love the notion of truth, liberty, and justice, and dynamism, and people being able to find their way through the pathway of this life. It's a river, man. Nobody's going to get it right perfectly from the beginning. And am I perfect? Hell no. I got so many problems I can't even count them. But the one thing I don't have is an illusion. I've got the freaking facts. What I don't understand is why it's so difficult to reach tens of millions of you to understand what is happening to you. That is destroying you. That is destroying us. Everything that we hold valuable, the value that's important to us. You just turn your head. You just run away. You put your head in the sand. You pretend like things aren't going to happen or that somebody's going to save you. None of that's going to happen. We have to rise together. And you can do that with the facts and the evidence. I know many of you are paying attention much more so than when we started this journey. I might go on a short hiatus and just see how this thing plays out. But ultimately, I'm here. We're here. We're going to keep moving forward. Things are going to adapt. But the long of the short of it is, this is the righteous grind. Onwards and upwards.